So we will get started. Welcome to Gladney University, presented by the Gladney Center for Adoption. We are super excited to have you here with us today. My name is Ashley Ellington, and I'm the Education and Outreach Specialist here at Gladney. Just a few things before we get started. If you need CEUs after the training, you will receive a pop-up. You need to fill that out to get your CEUs or certificates of completion. If for some reason you don't see that pop-up, you will get an email tomorrow where you could fill out that same information. So do not worry. And again, the CEUs take 5 to 7 business days to get back to you. If you have any questions during the presentation, please be sure to put them in the chat and I will be sure that Yvonne and Jennifer get back to you. So without further ado, we are super excited to have Gladney's very own Jennifer and Yvonne here to speak with you all today. And I know you're going to learn a lot about presenting the adoption options. So Jennifer, Yvonne, I'm going to let you take it from here.
My name is Jennifer, and I've been with the Gladney Center for 23 years. It was indeed, and I'm not making this up. It was my first job out of college. My job is all about education, bringing programs to our community about the adoption option and helping develop programs that serve our clients. I'm also a Gladney mama. 17 years ago, we adopted the most precious little boy you could ever imagine. I had no idea when I started working at Gladney that I would need Gladney to complete our family, but it's been the biggest blessing and joy of our life. So I love talking about adoption. I'm really passionate about it. In addition to my experience at Gladney, I've also worked with the National Council for Adoption, and I also have worked on a grant called the IAATP, in which we went around the country and we trained medical professionals, counselors, social workers on how to talk about the adoption option. So this is a topic I'm very passionate about, and as we go through the training today, I'll explain why I'm so passionate about it. I'm also really excited to be presenting today alongside my friend Yvonne. Welcome, Yvonne, to Gladney University.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you. Will you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. So my name is Yvonne. I am currently an options counselor here at the Gladney Center. I have worked in this department in a few different roles. So when I first started, I was a birth parent caseworker for a few years, and then for the last couple of years, I've been an options counselor. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. My heart is with this department, so happy to be able to talk about it.
Well, thank you so much. Also, I just want to say that it takes a lot of people to bring Gladney University to you guys, and I want to give a huge shout out to Ashley, Ismail, and Jess, who work so hard behind the scenes. Like I said, I'm really excited to bring this topic to you guys. It's something that I really believe in. There's been so many studies done about the fact that medical professionals, counselors, people that work in child welfare, they just aren't comfortable talking about the adoption option. They may be comfortable talking about the other options surrounding an unplanned pregnancy or someone struggling to parent, but they don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about adoption. So I'm so excited to not only talk about adoption, but to hopefully teach you something that you didn't know, and to also help you feel really confident in discussing adoption with your clients or patients. It's something that I think is really important in making sure that people are making fully informed decisions about their futures, about their lives, and about their outcomes. So without further ado, I'll kind of go through today's training. I hope it's interactive. So please, please, please put your questions or comments in the chat. We're so happy to address those concerns. I want you to get a lot out of this training. But we have a broad spectrum to go over today. And as you can see, the objectives on the slide right in front of you, we are going to be talking about lots of different things. And so anytime you have a question, just please feel free to bring that up in the chat. And I'm not going to read the slides to you just because I hate it when presenters do that. And I want it to feel like I'm in your living room or in your office. So I'm trying to advance my slides right now. Again, I'm having a little issue. It's there we go. One of the main points I want to make right away, and I know that most of you probably already know this, but adoption is a permanent process. So this is so different than foster care or temporary care. Adoption is a long-term, forever legal process. So as we're talking about that, I just want you to keep that in mind, that we're talking about permanency in this situation. I also want to go through our ethical compass with you. Every single decision that we make is in the best interest of the child. As long as we keep that as kind of our North Star or front and center, that helps us make sure that we're making the right decisions for the clients that we're serving. Gladney is a very ethical adoption agency. We've been around for a really long time, and that is truly our compass and something that we remind ourselves of every day. I want to tell you a little bit about Gladney for those of you who may not know about us, but we've been around for, in fact, this year we're celebrating our 135th anniversary. We're an adoption agency and education provider. Soon we'll be expanding our services even more to include more counseling options for the clients that we serve and for the community. So look, that's a little tease for more information coming soon about that. We have lots of different programs at Gladney. We have adoption through the state foster care system program. We have international adoption. We have a domestic infant adoption program. And we have our Gladney home that houses young ladies who are in foster care who are seeking adoption, who want permanency. So that's one of Gladney's newer programs, and we're really excited about that program as it continues to grow when we work with different individuals and providers to help make that program come true. So we work with OCOK, we work with the state, and so there's lots of new things that we're learning, and it's a program that I'm excited to see grow as the years go by. We have placed over 32,000 children in our rich history. That's something that everyone who works at Gladney is really proud of, because we work really hard to make sure that we're living our mission. Our mission is creating bright futures through adoption, and our why, or our belief at Gladney, is we believe every single child deserves a loving, caring family, and we work really hard to make those things come true for the kiddos that we serve. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Yvonne right now, and she's going to talk about understanding why someone would place their child for adoption. And a point I want to make, Yvonne, before we even get started is, I by no means, and I know you believe this too, we don't believe that adoption is the right choice for everyone, do we?
Right. No, sometimes it's not going to be the right choice, and that's okay. I think that, especially in my role, one of the things we do is just talk about options so that someone is better informed, a little bit more educated on what there is out there that might be able to help them. But at the end of the day, it's not for everyone. And so when it's not, we've still done our job. We've done our duty by at least letting someone know that there are more options out there. And in learning in it, maybe they can decide that it's either not for them or it is for them, and they can continue to work with us. Yeah.
Thank you.
So some of the whys behind adoption, this varies so much. There's not one reason why, and so we always just really try to get to know each client that comes to us so that we can better understand their story and then create a plan that's custom to their needs. So some of the reasons why someone might be planning adoption is there just might be a lack of support in their life. That could be a lack of financial support, emotional support. I've heard the term parenting takes a village, and I think that that's true. And so for so many people, they just don't have that support, and they know that they would struggle. Maybe they've been struggling financially, or have been unemployed or underemployed and just are struggling to make ends meet. They might be struggling with some other challenges in their life. There might be some issues with addiction. There might be mental health struggles. We never assume that just because someone has these struggles that they're making this plan. But for some women, for some families, that could be a reason why they decide that, maybe there is a lot going on in their life and they're just not in the best place at that very moment to parent. Some women are coming from unhealthy situations in the home and might not feel safe, or might not feel like it's a safe environment to bring a child home to. And then I think for some women, they're capable, they just envision something different for their child than what their situation can offer at that moment. Be it that maybe they're hoping for their child to be raised in a two-parent home and they don't have that, or maybe they just are not in a place right then and there to be a mom quite yet. So yeah, the reasons vary, but we always just try to get to know someone's story when they come to us, and so we always talk about that whenever someone is reaching out to us for the first time.
Well, I love that, because I think it's important. One of the things I love about you and the other caseworkers that work at Gladney is that you sincerely try to meet a client where she is.
Yes.
And I think that's important to understand, that not every client fits into a certain box, that people come to us for different reasons, different different whys of planning adoption. And then at the end of the day, you kind of already alluded to this, adoption may not even be the right choice for them, but at least they have explored that option.
Yeah, and that's what we want to do. We just want to help someone, familiarize themselves with their options, or maybe even just connect to resources that they might not have known are there, and just kind of, see how we can help. Like at the end of the day, it might not be adoption, but at least we've, connected them to some resources that might help them be more successful.
I love that. Well, let's talk about planning adoption while someone is pregnant.
Yeah, so planning adoption while someone is pregnant, it looks very different, but typically someone could reach out to us at any point in their pregnancy. They could have just found out they were pregnant. They could have they could be close to their delivery, their due date, but at any point in time, whenever someone is ready to reach out, they typically reach out to us. They can call us, they can email us, they can submit a little form on our website that just says, hey, this is my info, contact me at this time. But someone just reaches out and learns about adoption and just asks their questions. So when someone calls, one of the first reasons, or one of the first things that I ask is, what's your reason for making this call? Why are you considering this option? Do you mind sharing a little bit about your story? I always want to make someone feel comfortable, and so I'm okay with lots of details or minimal details. If someone just wants to be confidential and just call in and ask questions, that's okay too. But yeah, so our first interaction is just typically however someone feels comfortable reaching out to us to learn more. And then if they do decide to move forward with adoption, then they're assigned a caseworker. That caseworker works very closely with that client, one-on-one, just until their due date, and then for 6 weeks after. So, but again, we meet clients where they're at, so sometimes those meetings can take place pretty frequently, depending on that client's needs. And then other times, they just want to meet us the minimal amount of times possible, and that's okay too, because everyone's in a different place and everyone needs different things. So while you're working with your caseworker, while someone's working with their caseworker, they meet frequently, they do counseling, we provide legal services, we do planning for what that hospital time might look like. We are helping a client decide what's important to them in a family, and then going through that process of choosing a family, looking through family profiles so that they can really feel comfortable with the family that they choose for their child, because that is the most important decision that they'll have to make. So we just kind of walk hand in hand with them and support them and provide that help, however that may look for them and their situation. And so that is what, the timelines vary greatly, but that is typically what you can expect while someone is working with us to plan adoption.
And sometimes women come to us, so maybe they've already they've been thinking about adoption, but they haven't formally reached out. They may have even gone on our website and maybe found some parents that they like. And so that's what I think is also interesting, is that some women come to us and they kind of know what they want their plan to look like, and other women may just need a lot of help understanding their options and understanding the services that we provide. And that's where you guys are so helpful, I think.
Yeah, we just, every plan is custom created to meet that person's needs. And so yes, you're right, someone might know what they're looking for, and maybe they've reached out to a family and already had some interaction with them as well. And so we tell them when they're working with us, this is very much your plan, you're in control, we're just here to help support and guide you through that time.
And I also like to say that we used to use a lot of terms, and I don't know if this is still applies, but there's closed adoption, semi-open adoption, and all the way open adoption. So it's really the women kind of that are planning adoption. They get to kind of decide what kind of adoption they want. Most people, I would say, are kind of in the semi-open to open adoption realm these days. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, and that looks different for each adoption. Each one is really unique, and we always tell someone, we want that relationship to grow in a way that's comfortable for both sides. But yes, a woman is always able to tell us, what she's envisioning, what she thinks would be a good, healthy amount of interaction and updates to have for her, because for some women, that's going to be lots of updates and visits, and for some, they just need a little bit of distance for a while, and so that's okay too. But yeah, the woman is always able to choose what she wants.
That's my favorite thing about Gladney. And then I would say the same thing is true about adoptive parents. So one thing that is a little bit unique about Gladney, because not every adoption agency is like this, is we have caseworkers just for our expectant parents or birth parents, and we have caseworkers just for our adoptive parents.
Yes.
So while while expectant mother or birth mother may be working with us and planning adoption with her caseworker, on the other side of that, we have adoptive parents who are working closely with their caseworker. We're helping to educate the adoptive parents, prepare them for the journey, help them understand the process from the expectant mom's point of view, because they may not know a lot about expectant moms, and sometimes their worlds can look vastly different.
Yes.
And I think it's important that that we have caseworkers and professionals that work on both sides.
Yes, I agree. I think it's best when each client has their own advocate, because I think, and as on the birth parent team, we work really closely with the adoptive parent caseworkers, and so we're always trying to work together in a way that is beneficial for everybody. But yeah, I agree. I think it's really important to have each person have their advocate for them.
Yeah, me too. And when I went through the process, that was really meaningful to me, because I knew that I had someone that was helping us understand the adoption process. You think you know everything. I mean, I had worked here for 5 years at that point, and I thought I was well versed in the adoption process. But going through it myself, I became a client, and I could see a totally different perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And I got to really appreciate Gladney from a client standpoint too.
Yeah.
And I was also excited that I knew that our expectant mother that was planning adoption was getting amazing care, because that's something that was really important to us. And it's really important to most of the families that we're working with too. They want her to have the best care possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a big reason why people choose Gladney, is because of the services that we're able to offer expectant parents and birth families. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that that's a really great service.
Tell us a little bit about what that first face-to-face meeting could look like, Yvonne, between the expectant mom and the adoptive parents that she's choosing, and then kind of talk about the hospital plan, because I think that's a really interesting component of what we do.
Yeah. So we like to eat at Gladney. So we like to lunch or dine. So those meetings typically take place over a meal, and so I think everyone's just a little bit more relaxed. There's something to do, and you're sharing a meal with this family that you've chosen. And so your caseworker or a birth mom's caseworker is there, and expectant mom's caseworkers are to support her. Usually at this point, she's been working with her caseworker for a little bit of time, and so usually that's a welcome support. And so we're there just to kind of be a support if you need us, but our goal is that, that a woman spend that time getting to know the family, that she asks hard questions, that she's just taking that time to meet this family and learn about them, more than what she's probably learned up to that point, which has probably been a beautiful profile book that they've created. But that's an opportunity to just kind of get to know them more closely. And then at that point, if someone wants to stay in touch, they're able to do that in a way that they feel comfortable. So maybe that's text messages or emails. But yeah, so first meetings typically take place over a meal, and you have support people there. Women bring their partners. They can bring a sister. They can bring, their partner, whomever is their person. We welcome that. So we want just that opportunity to be there for someone to get to know each other.
Who do you think is more nervous in that meeting, the adoptive parents or the expectant moms?
Adoptive parents, for sure, for sure. It's like, I've heard people say it, like, feel like there's kind of going on a blind date, and like you want to make a good first impression and stuff. And so, like, yeah, this is a pretty important date. But those, in my experience, those were always really pleasant times, and it's kind of when you can see the plan come together, because at that point they've met them, they've talked to them, and that's really, I think, the time when they've kind of created that bond with them. And so it's exciting to see how that unfolds and kind of gets created. So I've been able to be witness to some really, really special meetings that I will remember forever. So yeah, those are important opportunities. And if a woman is not ready to or doesn't want to, she doesn't have to. This is just an opportunity that we provide, but we know that not everyone might want to, have a meal or talk. And so that also can look like a FaceTime or just a phone call. So those vary a lot. But then the hospital plan you were asking about. So the hospital plan is where we work out all those details that someone either might not think about at the beginning, or really be worried about. So hospital plan is just how a woman wants things to go while she's in the hospital. It's not a medical plan. It's not a labor and delivery or birth plan. It's just the hospital plan as far as things like who will be your support person, who will take you to the hospital, do you want the baby to room in with you? Do you want the baby to be in the nursery? Would you like the adoptive parents to come to the hospital right away, or do you want that time in the hospital for yourself to bond with baby? We have seen women do it all sorts of ways, and there's no right or wrong way. It's just really wherever someone is at and what is best for them. Sometimes there are family members of the expectant mother's family that want to meet baby and want to have an opportunity to take pictures or love on baby too, and so that's fine. So we're just kind of outlining that plan so that she's not having to explain to every staff member or person that might come in how she'd like things to go. And so we take time to just kind of ask the questions that people will probably ask in the hospital so that she can have a plan and maybe hopefully offer her a little bit of relief that she won't have to explain that as she's in the hospital and talking to doctors and nurses. So we share that plan with her doctor and with the hospital staff beforehand, so everyone has a copy of it and everyone knows her plan. And if things change, that's okay too. It's just kind of a guideline as to how she'd like things to go.
What I love about the hospital plan is it gives her power. And it gives her a sense of control of what she wants her birthing experience or hospital experience to be. I've heard caseworkers say this a lot, that the expectant moms that we're working with are pregnant moms. Like they have the same feelings, the same hopes and dreams that every other expectant mom has for their baby.
Yeah.
And so the only difference is just she's making a plan for her baby that involves her not actively parenting that child, but she's making, in a sense, I like to say that she's making a plan for her baby's future that is, decades ahead of what most moms have to think of. So she's really making a caring, compassionate plan for her baby, putting her baby or her child before her own needs, because I've never met a birth mother that just did not want to parent her baby. Like if circumstances would be different, they wish they could do that.
Yeah.
So that's something I like to point out, is that that the clients that we're working with love their baby very, very much. And this is a really hard decision they're making, filled with a lot of pain and a lot of grief and loss. And we'll talk about that grief and loss kind of as we go on, and how we manage that situation with her, how we provide the counseling that she needs to get through that. Another important aspect of the hospital plan is, one time I heard one of our caseworkers explain to me that it helps give them the words, the expectant mom, the words to know what to do when she's feeling certain things. That is an important part of the plan, is giving her control and power in that situation, and recognizing that she's an expectant mom going through delivery just like any other mom.
Yes, yeah, we want to give them or empower them to be able to make that plan for themselves. And you're right, respect the fact that they're becoming mothers, just because they're not going to be parenting their child themselves. they're still a mother in every way, physically and emotionally. And so we want to honor her wishes and make sure that things go as smoothly as possible, as much as is in our control. So anything that we can do to kind of make that process a little bit more smoothly for her, go smoothly, we hope to be able to do that. So yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what relinquishment looks like after delivery.
So relinquishment being the time when a woman signs her legal documents relinquishing her parental rights, stating that she's making a voluntary adoption plan. Those are legal documents, and so every state's different, and we work all over the country, and so we have an amazing legal team here that helps navigate us through whatever state we might be working in. But most states have a waiting period that has to be that we have to see out to before a woman can sign those documents. So for example, in Texas, that's 48 hours. So a woman cannot sign any legal documents for 48 hours after she delivers. We don't necessarily expect that everyone's going to sign at that 48-hour mark, but typically, when you're working with a caseworker, when a woman is working with a caseworker, we explain what the laws are. We make sure she has an opportunity to understand that. And then together, they make a plan as to when is the right time for me to sign these legal documents. For some women, that might be while they're still in the hospital. For others, they might need more time, and they might do that later in the comfort of their home or our office. But typically, that is done with your caseworker, unless you have a desire to go to court, and then that looks a little different. But usually, a woman would like to do that in a private place, and so her caseworker supports her through that time after she's had an opportunity to read through everything, understand everything, make sure that we're answering any questions. And so, usually a couple of days after delivery is when a woman typically signs those papers.
Thank you. And I think we have a question.
Yes, Jennifer, we have a question. It says, I work with youth in foster care. Is the adoption process the same for them if they become pregnant and wish to put their child up for adoption, or is it different due to them being in care?
I'm gonna take a stab at this answer, and you tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. I think it works the same way, right? She can make a plan for a baby.
Yeah, so, when you are having a baby, even a minor is a parent, and so all the same legal the legal process is the same. So a woman is still able to make that plan. A minor is still able to make that plan. What I don't know is, if there are any extra steps that would be required because they are in care themselves. But I'm almost certain what we would do is hire an independent attorney to represent them, so that we can just make sure that everything is being done ethically, that expectant mother's rights have been explained to her, and that there's no other kind of circumstances that would maybe make her, unable to make that decision or whatnot. But I think the answer to that question is yes, she's still able to. I think that we might just have to take a few extra steps.
We do. We hire that ad litem. It's actually happened before at Gladney, and it's not uncommon. But yeah, we want to help her make an empowered plan. A lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, but we have had the experience of youth in foster care who experience an unplanned pregnancy. Maybe they don't want the same outcomes as they have experienced themselves, so they do consider adoption as a permanent parenting option for their child. And so that's not uncommon at Gladney. Thank you. Great question. And if anybody has any more, we're happy to answer those for you. Thank you so much. Do you want to talk a little bit about placement and what that looks like? Because that can look different.
Yes, and so placement is what we call the time when the adoptive parents physically take placement of the baby. So the day when they are not, sometimes it's meeting baby for the first time, sometimes they've had an opportunity to meet baby beforehand, but that can look so different. And so again, kind of just talking about what we spoke about earlier, hopefully a woman has had the time to think about how she would like that to happen, and how what role she would like to play in that. And so sometimes placements happen from the hospital, and mom is there and kind of presents baby to adoptive parents when they come into the hospital room, and it's usually a very sweet emotional moment, and there's lots of tears and laughs and hugs. And so that is one of the ways it could look. Sometimes a woman is not wanting to be a part of that moment, and that is okay too. There's no right or wrong way to do it. We could never know firsthand what that woman is feeling at that very moment, and so we want to honor her wishes as a mama and do whatever she feels is best for her. And so she can or she cannot be a part of that moment, whatever she feels is best. We actually have a room here at Gladney. It's a very special room where lots of memories and families have been made. And so sometimes it's a ceremony, and adoptive parents are in that room and they're waiting. And then mom walks in with baby in her arms, and they share some time together, and they make lots of memories and take pictures. That's a really special moment. And I guess I didn't realize, because I work in the birth parents department, that some people have worked here for over a decade and haven't actually seen a moment like that. And so I was fortunate enough when I started here as an intern. And so my very, very first day as an intern, my supervisor said, I have a placement today. And so I asked if you could come, and they said they don't mind. And I was like, I get to see this? Like, it was exceeded my dreams of what my experience as an intern would be, but it was so special. And it was at that moment that I kind of fell in love with adoption and realized like how beautiful that can be. And so, so those can look very different, but again, we ask a woman what she wants, and we make sure that that happens in a way and at a place that she feels comfortable.
It is amazing. I'm glad you talked about the beauty of the moment, the beauty and the pain.
Yes.
Because both exist in that moment.
Absolutely.
I can only, use our experience, my personal experience with placement day. I was really nervous because I didn't want to see our birth mom in pain.
Yes.
And I remember me and my husband prayed about it before we went into the hospital room, and it was the most, I definitely felt God in that moment. And our birth mom's name is Virginia, and she was sitting up in bed and she was beaming. She was like really, really happy looking, and that surprised me. And I had given myself a little talk before we went in and said, I just want to go straight to her before we even see our baby, because I wanted her to know how much we love her. And I went over there and I was loving on her and hugging her, and she's like, stop, go hold your baby. And I remember like wondering because we had a biological child as well already. And I remember thinking, what is this going to feel like to hold her baby? And would it feel like it was meant to be? And it absolutely did. So the moment I held him, it was like a lightning bolt went through my heart. And I just remember inhaling his scent and feeling so blessed. And I looked over at Virginia, and she put her hand out, and she wanted us to hold her hand with him. And I did feel like we were a family, and it was very, to this day, we like pray for her and honor her, because we wouldn't have our family without her.
Right.
And it meant the world to me that she was happy, and she was super vulnerable with us. And she was already parenting a child, and that had been going really hard for her, really rough. She didn't have a home, and it was really hard. And I asked her why she was making an adoption plan. I just wanted to know for ourselves. And she said, I just want a do-over. I want to know that I did something right. These are her words, not mine. And I just remember thinking, what a brave, amazing thing to say. And she's like, I'll never have to worry about him. I'll never have to worry that he has enough food or that he has a warm place to sleep. And it just made me love her, a lot more, and appreciate where she was coming from.
Right.
So it was the placement day for our family was beautiful, and it's a memory that we talk to him about often. He loves to hear what that was like. And then a few weeks later, we had lunch at El Phoenix with her, and it was so fun to see how well she was doing. And she had a relationship that she has to this day. She had fallen in love, met someone and fallen in love, and that made me happy. I was happy to see her so happy.
Yeah.
And we still provide letters and pictures. We're proud to show him off, and he has a lot of musical talent, and he got that from his birth mother, not from us.
Yeah. No, I think those are super special moments. And someone said it, an adoptive mom said it best, and I was just like, yeah, that's it. But she was talking about how important it was for her to share moments of her daughter with her birth mother, and wanted her to see that she was happy and that she was loved. And she was like, I just really want to give her the honor of letting her see that her plan worked. And I was like, yes, that's exactly it. You're letting her know that like this plan is working. My daughter has all the things that I wanted her to have. She has these parents that I handpicked for her, and they adore her, and everyone in their family adores her. And I'm like, yes, like that's exactly what every woman deserves to see. And so I'm sure she was really happy to see how much he was loved.
We were so happy. Yes, she said, she's like, I can't believe that it actually worked out. And that may seem like a surface thing to say or feel, but not a lot of things had worked out for her. And so she got to see something, like you just said, like her plan that she started working on for months and months and months ago came to life.
Yeah.
And that I was happy for her in that situation too. It's a good,
Yeah.
we're very grateful for her. And so after placement, tell us a little bit about post-adoption support.
So that's something that, I always try to talk about that whenever we're meeting with someone and they're learning about adoption, because I think that that's so unique to Gladney. I've heard a lot of stories of women who have planned adoption and maybe, years later the agency closed, or not sure where to do or where to go for that support. And so we're very mindful that adoption is not just while a woman is pregnant. That's not just while she's in the hospital having the baby. That's not just at placement. Adoption is a lifelong choice, and there are feelings that come after a year later, 5 years later, 20 years later. People are still able to call us and say, I was adopted in 60s, 70s, and I'm, trying to find my family, or kind of getting ahead of myself, but that post-adoption support we think is really important. So your caseworker or woman's caseworker would work with her for 6 to 8 weeks after she delivers, and that can look like what she needs. Sometimes that's space away from her caseworker and not talking about adoption a lot. Sometimes that's a lot of counseling, and so meeting with her caseworker to talk about those feelings that happen or that she has after delivery and after placement. So for 6 to 8 weeks, our caseworkers stay with that mama and they work with them closely, just how they have during their pregnancy. And beyond that, we have a department here at Gladney that offers support to all members of the adoption triad. So adoptive families, birth parent families, and adoptees. And so that department is there if you need to call and ask questions, if you want to share medical history and just share that with the adoptive family or your child's adoptive family. If you find yourself 5-10 years later just needing some additional support and need counseling resources, we'll try to get that. We'll try to figure out what that might look like for you in your area and offer you some options. But I think that that's really special and unique to Gladney because yeah, we know that adoption doesn't just happen once and then it's done and over with. There's still very much that adoption that was this is how your family began, and so everybody is different, and so they might need support, they might have questions, and so that doesn't just end 6 to 8 weeks after a woman has a baby.
In fact, we did a reunion not long ago between an 80-year-old birth mom and her 60-year-old a child that she placed for adoption.
Yeah.
So it really can span the lifetime.
Yes.
So we've talked about planning adoption, but while pregnant. But sometimes adoption takes place after a child is already born. Can you talk about what that's like?
Yes. And so in a perfect world, if someone could start, getting that support while they're pregnant and working with a caseworker while they're pregnant, that would be ideal. We think it's, the longer that we can provide services, the better. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes a woman didn't know she was pregnant. Sometimes maybe she knew, but she was just in denial and couldn't talk about it. And, for some people, not making a plan is how they cope. But also, like, we have encountered a lot of situations where someone just didn't know or didn't know until they were really close to their due date and they weren't sure what to do. And so if there is a situation like that and someone has not made a plan up to that point, but after they have the baby, they find themselves maybe needing to look into adoption, then we can do that too. It looks different, our timelines look different, but we're still able to help. So sometimes that is a call made by a social worker or a nurse at the hospital that kind of lets us know that there's someone that wants to consider this option and they want us to go out and talk to somebody. Sometimes the mom will make the call themselves and just say, I just had a baby. I just was wondering if, someone could come help me or could you come talk to me? And so we're always, we kind of just make a plan just according to where she's at. So if she's somewhere where we can drive to, we go pretty quickly, and we're mindful of the timelines, and so we know that someone might be about to leave the hospital and need to maybe talk to someone quick so that there's a plan in place for baby before she leaves. And so we would just go to her as soon as possible, travel to her at the hospital, and work together with the social workers and nurses and her to make a plan for baby. And so we can help a mom maybe make that plan while she's still there. Maybe she has a few days at the hospital, and we're just meeting with her daily there to kind of work on the different steps. But also, hospitals don't really keep women that long at the hospital after you've delivered. So let's say someone has to leave. We have an awesome program that we call transitional care, which is our wonderful, wonderful volunteers that take care and love on babies while a woman needs more time to work on her plan. And so a lot of times, most times, we need just someone to care for baby while mom can discharge, and then work with her caseworker to make that plan. And so that's on her timeline as well. So we don't want to rush anyone just because they haven't had an opportunity to plan adoption prior to their delivery. Does not mean that we want to rush her through the process. We still need to make sure she understands this option, make sure that she understands that it's, not a choice that she can change her mind about. We still need to let her know what her rights are legally. We need to know maybe what the situation is with the father, and we need to kind of work through all those things. So while we're working through those things, our volunteer families are taking care of baby. And so sometimes that's getting mom resources, connecting her to an attorney. Maybe there's some really big challenges that she's facing that maybe she just needs some help with. And so if we can get her some resources during that time too, that's our goal. And so, we just really kind of immediately go to her and then make a plan. And we want someone to have realistic expectations too. So, we want to just make sure that we're providing the services that she needs, and we're doing, we're doing a good job of getting her the help that she needs. And sometimes maybe she would, need some resources that would help her determine whether or not she can maybe be successful at parenting. So just because someone is calling us to talk to us about the option of adoption, we're still going to be mindful that, maybe this is not, it's typically not a woman's first choice. And so, do you just need a little bit of resources that maybe can help you determine whether or not you could be successful at parenting? And maybe we get those for her, and then she's like, okay, I can do this. I can make a parenting plan, and I can do this. And that's fine. Then we've done our due diligence by that client, and we've provided her with those services that she needs or resources that she needs. At least she's become educated on that option, and then she can then make that choice as to whether or not this is right for her. And if it is, then we kind of just swoop into action and get all the moving pieces into place, and still try to provide a positive experience for her.
Absolutely, and she's still in control. So
yes,
she still
very
can choose
much.
the family. She can, she can
Meet
tell us
them,
what
still
meet
have
them.
that. Baby will be safe and will be loved on while she's working through all those things, and she also has an opportunity to be getting visits with baby and updates on baby while he or she is in our care. We call them nursery visits, where they just have time alone in a little nursery where they can, still take care of all baby's needs. And that's their baby, and so we want them to feel like they're making a good and safe choice for a baby.
Absolutely.
Even if they come to us later.
And I love how you talk about the fact that we try to use supports and services in our community for her, because sometimes it really is just a timeout or a deep breath and, let's figure things out.
Yeah.
While other times it can be a little bit more challenging. Maybe she has an open CPS case with other children, and maybe she's tested positive for, narcotics, and maybe this is absolutely the best plan for her. So sometimes we're working in conjunction with CPS.
Yes. Yeah, that's our goal, is to, anyone who's involved or is trying to make sure that there is a safe plan for baby, be it a social worker or a nurse or CPS worker. We want to work with them just to, make sure that there's a good plan in place, and also just make sure that she's having an opportunity to learn about resources that she might have not otherwise known. So I can think of a situation where there was a young couple and they just didn't know. She'd never had a baby before and didn't know what it felt like to be pregnant, and just thought she was not feeling well and ended up having a baby. And so for them, they just needed time. If they didn't even know that they were becoming parents, we don't expect them to have had it all figured out in 2 or 3 days after she delivered. I think they needed time to let that process and just kind of like, oh, okay, we're parents. Now we have to make a plan. Can we do this? Do we have the ability to do this together? And I think ultimately for them, they just kind of decided that they hadn't had a plan to have children anytime soon. They were not prepared, but they very much loved their baby and they wanted the best for their baby. But that was a situation where they utilized transitional care for a few weeks while they made their plan together. Because again, we didn't want them to be rushed. We wanted them to have a chance to look into their resources, maybe talk to their family, see what that support might look like for them. And then, they had time to, as a couple, talk about, what's best for us, what's best for our baby. And if they, at the end of that time, if they would have decided, hey, we can do this, then, they could have come and pick up baby and went about making a parenting plan, but they chose adoption. And I think that they felt, I think that there's probably some level of comfort just knowing like, okay, we have some time, we can make this plan, we don't have to rush through it. And they had support through that. And there's, it's never our goal we're not here to, what's the word? Convince someone, convince someone that there's one option that's best for them over the other. We have no way of knowing that. Only they know as parents what they were capable of, and maybe the mental ability that they had at that point in time as a couple. They just said they just didn't feel mentally prepared to become parents, and I'm like, I get it. I have 2 kids, and sometimes I'm not mentally prepared to parent them, and so.
Well, that's such a brave thing to say too. Like, it doesn't mean that they're, not good people or there's something wrong.
No, not at all.
They're being honest and looking at the resources, and when I say resources, I'm not just talking financial, I mean like emotional and, what's going on in their lives and are they in the best position to parent?
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly brave.
And we, you said something earlier, like, that they don't want people to judge them. I've had women tell me, like, I hope you're not going to judge me for like the things I'm going to say. And I'm like, we could never, like we are not walking in that person's shoes. We're not walking on their path. So, there's never, you said it earlier, there's never been an instance where I don't think a woman loves her baby. I think that this is probably a harder choice in so many ways. And so, we just kind of we want to learn a person's story. Just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to know that they're supported and that we're not encouraging one thing either way. We want to make sure that this is the right choice for them.
Exactly. Thank you. And it looks like we have a question, Ashley.
Yes, we do. Kind of a tough question. What happens if the child does not survive birth?
Oh, that does happen, and that is really sad. So what happens is, first, if that child was matched with an adoptive family, we notify the family of what happened, but we also recognize that our client, the expectant mom, or the birth mother, or the mom, she is going to go through all the things that anybody would go through if they lost a child. So just making sure that we're getting her the grief and loss counseling that she will need, making sure that we're being compassionate and tender with her, making sure the hospital staff is working on her behalf, which they're usually amazing at doing. Am I leaving anything out, Yvonne?
No, I mean, I think that's, I was trying to think if I've ever encountered a situation like that, and I think maybe not at birth, but maybe like a late term miscarriage or like a stillborn, I guess it would be at that point. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, all the same grief is going to be present. And so at that point in time, I think we would just work to get her the resources that she needs to move forward with that. And so maybe that's not our agency at that point anymore, but maybe that's a counselor in her area. And then the adoptive parents would have their caseworker there to kind of be their support and walk them through those emotions, because I think there's a lot of really heavy emotions if something like that were to happen. But yeah, I think we just still kind of, at that point just say like, what can we do to help you? How can we help? And then just kind of see what that person is kind of requesting at that time.
Great question though. Thank you so much. All right. So we've been talking a lot about this along the way, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously Gladney is a nonprofit organization. And so we provide, all of our services to our expectant moms and birth moms are free. And that just, again, looks different for based on her needs.
Mm-hmm.
I do like to let people know that Gladney's not a shelter, so we can't immediately, find housing for someone. Like something like that takes some time. So we're working with the clients to make sure that we're connecting them with the resources they need. But sometimes that takes a little bit of time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and so everyone is and that's actually one of the steps. I didn't really talk about it, but when someone first meets with us and has decided at that point to move forward with making an adoption plan, we make something called a service plan with them. So that is just kind of, with that mother, just kind of trying to learn what her situation is and, what areas could there be some does she need help? Where is it that she's lacking in resources? Maybe she has other children in the home that she's providing for. And so we make a plan together. So sometimes that is, I need help job searching. I need help building a resume. We have partnered with community resources that, we're not the experts in job searching and resume building, but we can connect you to someone who is so that they can help a woman. Sometimes that is just getting medical coverage. That's confusing. And if you've never had to do it before, or maybe you have done it before, it's, you need kind of some help through that. So we can help get her connected with medical coverage, a doctor to go see.
Can I say something about that? Because we do have an in-service Medicaid provider.
Yes.
She is amazing. Her name's Glenna.
She knows all the things.
She knows all the things. She helps me solve some personal insurance issues.
Yeah, she can do that too.
She's like amazing. But she also advocates for our clients in ways that you may not think. So, for example, if they have some past due bills from another situation, or they're not sure of the kind of care they can get, she works very hard to make sure that they're getting all kinds of services, not just related to her pregnancy, like even dental services sometimes, but she also works to help solve problems that may be pre-existing. She has a heart of gold, and she has the patience of, I don't know, Job or something. She is amazing.
Yeah, no, she is. And so if there's ever an insurance question, a Medicaid question, I just recently called her and asked, there's a young girl. She's still covered under her parents' insurance, but those are still come with really high deductibles. Is there anything we can do about that? And so Glenna was like, yes, we can apply for Medicaid as a secondary coverage, and that'll cover out-of-pocket expenses. And she would need to choose this type and this. I was like, yes. I mean, just email that to the client and let her know. And so we found some providers that took her insurance, and we're going to take that Medicaid as well. And so she was able to get an appointment with them. But I would have never known those answers off the top of my head. So yeah, we would be lost without her.
You
so
would. And we provide free medical care. So even if this client didn't have medical insurance or Medicaid, we could still help her. Our goal is to help clients.
There's situations where that will happen because maybe someone is not eligible for those services. Maybe they don't have a job. Maybe they're not a citizen. Maybe there's something that makes them unable to get those resources that would be there for other people. And yeah, she'll call the doctors and make the arrangements, and she makes all the things happen. So
that's amazing. Well, we do love her. So the services are a very important part of our component, but also let's talk about a caseworker's role a little bit. And we have an example on your slide right now of Erica, one of our caseworkers in Florida. But I just have a soft spot for the work that they do. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ladies, but they have such a hard job, and they do such a great job at providing those services for our clients. They are the ones that are supporting women through that time. It's usually a very emotional time in their life. It's a dark time, and so we know that there's joy in adoption, but there's also really, really heavy an emotional roller coaster that's happening with that expectant mom. And so our caseworkers are there to walk with that woman in her journey and be a support person as much as she would like them to be. I've had the honor of working with an amazing, amazing team of women whose just hearts are for our mission and for the clients that we serve. And they're some of the greatest people. And so Erica, for example, is, she's one of the caseworkers that has been with Gladney for a really long time.
A long time, like over a decade, I
Yes,
think.
and she's amazing because she will sit with a mom and eat with her and her kids and talk about, what she's feeling that day. And another time she meets with a client, she might be taking her to a doctor's appointment or taking her to get groceries or some personal personal items or anything she needs for her household. And so we just have the sweetest caseworkers, and they're very mindful to know that like not everyone wants them to be in their lives in the same way that maybe someone else would, but they really work at getting to know their clients and getting to know like how can I support you, how can I walk with you during this time, is that getting you groceries, or is that just meeting with you every couple of weeks to talk about this plan. But Erica has actually started, she's our Florida caseworker, and she started a program or a support group for the birth clients that live in her area. And so that's just something that we think is really important, that there's that support afterwards. And so Erica is wonderful at that, and that's just an example of something that our caseworkers would do. But yeah, they're a really special group of ladies.
They really are, and it's a big support group. She's really grown that group. But
yes,
yeah.
I love seeing her pictures every year from they have dinners annually, and I think that that's so special. And they love her. Her past clients love her, but of course they do. She's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I love her too. Let's talk. You've touched on this a little bit, but in the state of Texas, at relinquishment, she can't sign. Our clients cannot sign their relinquishment until at least 48 hours, and then of course she can have longer, right?
Yes. So no sooner than 48 hours, and so that is done in the way that she would like that to be. And so I think I mentioned earlier that can be in the hospital, maybe that's at home for her, maybe she needs a little bit more time. But yeah, so we know, and we talk about that when we're working with someone, just so that they know what to expect. And so and hopefully that they've had an opportunity to read through all their documents and ask any questions that they have. And so, yes, and 48 hours is what we see in Texas. And then we make a plan as to, will that be at 48 hours or do you need more time?
And it can change. Like she can think it's going to go one way, but then maybe she'll need, more time. I also, every state is different. And we work in all 50 states, so we have to be well versed in adoption law. We have an amazing attorney, Heidi Cox, who is very, she's an amazing person, and she's done a couple of Gladney universities for us, so you may know her. But and if you haven't seen Heidi speak, I highly recommend you search our Gladney University on YouTube and find Heidi's latest presentation that she did a couple weeks ago. It was really amazing. And then also, one of the things that we do at Gladney is kind of take away that fear with the birth father. I think some of our clients, maybe they have a really scary relationship with possible fathers of the baby or father of the baby. And so it's our job to kind of take that away from her, and we'll do everything that we need to do on that side, and she won't have to get involved in it. And I think that's important.
Yep, that's part of making that plan, is that she can tell us what she would like, and we tell her what the laws say that needs to happen for an adoption to take place, and that's different for every situation. But yes, you're right. We refer to Heidi for all the things and make a plan with her.
Yes. And so this slide is something that I'm passionate about. You may have already heard me say this if you've listened to past presentations that I've given, but I really believe that adoption can be the prevention to abuse and neglect. And what I mean by that is that sometimes someone's not prepared to parent. And so before something horrible happens, adoption can be the wonderful right answer for her. Not always, but sometimes. So I just like to put that out there, that the people that are working directly with women who are experiencing an unplanned pregnancy, you guys are in the place of most opportunity. You can see what's happening in her life. You can see, you can hear what she's telling you. And if adoption could be the right answer, it's important that that is mentioned to her. Always compare it to a doctor. And so when you're, say a woman, the example I use is, say a young woman is diagnosed with breast cancer. and she has 3 treatment options. She can have surgery, she can have a radiation, and she can have chemotherapy. But if the doctor is looking at her and saying, well, she's young, she's probably not going to want to have surgery, so I'm just going to tell her about these other 2 treatment options, he's severely impacting her, potentially her quality of life. He's taking away the ability to make, for her to make a decision that could be the right decision for her. And so that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that adoption is mentioned. There are a lot of statistics that show that women who are facing an unplanned pregnancy, adoption is not mentioned more than 60% of the time. And if it is mentioned, 40% of the time the information is inaccurate. And that's why programs like these are so important, because I want to educate the community about why adoption option is so important and how to bring it up to clients. So we'll be talking about that in just a second. I also I do believe that there is a correlation between, if you look at the number as through the year, the last few years especially, adoptions have been declining, meaning fewer women are planning adoption. But as fewer women plan adoption, the number of children in foster care are rising. And so to me, that is a correlation, meaning that maybe they're not prepared to parent and then bad things are happening. So this slide is really just kind of, it's a graphic depiction of the reasons that someone, or kind of the dangers that are present in the home, of abandonment, emotional abuse, neglectful supervision, medical neglect, physical abuse and neglect, sexual abuse. Those are reasons that a child might be removed from a home. And then the indicators that are there present before something horrible happens can be sometimes incarceration, domestic violence, substance abuse, mental health challenges, medical problems, family crisis. So if you're seeing those kinds of things in a home environment and she is experiencing an unplanned pregnancy, then adoption might be a wonderful right answer for her. It may not be, but it's just so important to bring that up. So I love that slide for this reason. And if you want, after this presentation, I can make sure that we send you the link to this slide so you can have this information in front of you. So I want to talk about what would prevent someone from making an adoption plan. What do you guys, and this is a great thing for you guys to put in the chat, and then Ashley can pop on and tell me your reasons. But why would someone not want to choose adoption? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I'm going to wait patiently for you to put it in the chat. I have a whole list of reasons in my head, but I know you have some too. Ashley, is anyone putting anything in yet?
Okay, just got one. They're worried about being judged.
Yes, we've talked about that a lot. And that makes me sad that they feel that society has put judgment on them. And it's one of our jobs as an agency and as an organization to help give her the words and the power to explain her choice. We have on our website, if you go on our website at gladneyadoption.com, you'll see that we have some strong messaging surrounding this, that we've done a lot of research and we know that the women that we're working with are brave and strong. And that's the message that we want to send them. Anybody else?
Yes, we got a couple more. Feeling of shame and guilt. There's still a stigma against adoption.
Yes.
And then we have pressure from family to parent.
Absolutely.
And extended family intervention.
That's right. We see all those things as well. And again, it's our job to help kind of take away the noise and help her figure out what might be, what she is wanting, kind of separated out from what like her village is wanting. I used to do a wonderful training exercise when I was working with the IAATP, with the National Council for Adoption. And one of the things that we would do in our trainings, we would give people a pad of Post-it notes, and we would ask them to write down all the labels that someone may face when they're planning adoption. And we would have everything from irresponsible to not loving their baby to being promiscuous, all these labels. And so I would have someone get up that would be an expectant mom, and we would put all these labels on her. And you could see how it was just a visual representation of how she was weighed down by these labels. And then she would go to the counselor at the adoption agency, and one by one we would remove these labels and help her understand what's happening in her life and separate, like I said, the noise from what was really happening. Help her to take a breath and understand that nothing has to happen immediately. We have time to make an adoption plan even after she's delivered the baby. We place toddlers for adoption quite often at Gladney, and then also we work with the state on the older child placements too. So she does have time, and we don't want her to feel rushed or judged or any of those things. But those are some very good reasons why someone would not plan adoptions. Here are some other ones. Maybe there's a lack of information about the adoption process. She just doesn't understand what's happening, or adoption may look a lot different than she thinks. Maybe she's afraid that the child will be abused. Maybe she grew up in the foster care system and she had experienced some physical or emotional abuse or even sexual abuse, and she's afraid that would happen with her child. Maybe society is telling her that all she needs is love to parent her baby. And while that is a beautiful sentiment, it's just not true. And so to help her understand what she will need to parent a baby and help connect her to the resources that can help her do that if that's her wish. But all of these things, cultural barriers to adoption, romanticizing parenting can be something that people see. But it's important that we understand the barriers to adoption so we can address them. And this is another place where I want you guys to kind of come in with your information. What would hinder professionals from talking about adoption with their clients or their patients? Ashley, are you seeing any yet?
I'm not seeing any
You're not
yet.
seeing any yet? I know there's the first person to give me a barrier to why a professional would not talk about adoption will get a Gladney something swag in the mail.
Their own biases.
Their own biases.
Mhm.
Ding, ding, ding. That's so true. We see that sometimes in the hospital. We see that with other counselors. Maybe they've had a really bad adoption experience, or maybe they've had something happen in their personal life that just kind of closed them off to adoption. Maybe they're also unfamiliar with the adoption process. Maybe they don't have the words to talk about adoption. Maybe they don't know who to refer their client to. They're not sure of ethical agencies. You can always go to the National Council for Adoption's website and check out all of the agencies that are member agencies of NCFA are very reputable adoption agencies. We are blessed in Texas that there are several amazing organizations out there that can work with people. I highly suggest that you contact a few and get to know them and ask to take a tour, ask to have a meeting with one of the staff on at the organization. Just get to know them, and if you have a good feeling about them and you think that their practices are ethical and you think you can have a good relationship, that's a great way to develop a referral partner for adoption. And Gladney is always here for you. We also give tours at Gladney, so if you would like to meet our staff, see our building, see the workspaces that we have, see our counseling rooms, we would love to show you around. Maybe there is distrust of adoption agencies because while I just talked about how many great ones we have in Texas, there's also some really bad ones. And so you want to stay away from the ones that you don't think are ethical or a good partner for you. Maybe they prejudge the client's decision, like we've talked about already a little bit. Maybe they feel like this woman, maybe she's married and is already parenting, and why would she choose adoption? But again, you don't know her story or walked in her shoes, and so that's why it's important to get to know the client and their barriers, but also understand that adoption can be a great solution for someone, even someone that's married. Not always, but sometimes. And
Jennifer,
then,
we have a question real
yeah,
quick.
sure.
What is the oldest age of a child that can be adopted when a mother comes to the agency?
So Do you know the answer to this, Yvonne? I think I know, but I want to make sure.
Yes and no. So, assuming that they're not in the foster care system, so not
Yes.
New Beginnings. So that depends. You give your answer first. Let me.
Okay, so it does depend. It's case by case. So say someone is working, has a 5-year-old and they're wanting to place that child for adoption. That would be a process. It depends on what's happening in the home. So say that she was afraid that she was about to do something that she, doesn't feel good about. Maybe abuse and neglect is about to take place, or it's taking place on some level at that point. We can put that child in transitional care that Yvonne talked about, our volunteer families that are certified by the state to do temporary foster care. And we would put that child in care, work with the mom, make sure is this a matter of her needing resources and support? Or is this a matter of she's really can't parent and doesn't want to parent? We would work with her, find out that information, and then we could start that process. If the child is older than 5, it gets a little bit more complicated because there is a lot of things that we have to consider. And so this might be a great way for Gladney and CPS to work together because we do have a CPS program at Gladney. We do work directly with the state to place children in forever homes. So we can work in that situation too. We would just have to figure out and this is an internal thing, but we would figure out the best path forward for both the birth mother and the child. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I think what I would add to that is that there are so many more steps when a child is a little older, even, 2, 3, 4. And so sometimes we're just truly not the best fit based on maybe the level of services that specific situation might need, and then the steps that would that would be involved to make adoption happen, and we just might be limited by maybe distance or something. And so if we feel that maybe there's even a situation that we could make it work as far as, the legal side of it, but maybe we're states away and we just know that we might not be able to offer the best support that would be needed in this specific situation, then we might look for an agency that's closer to that person that might be able to meet that person's needs. And so there's just so many more steps involved, and we need to work very closely with a parent to make an adoption happen. And so if we know that we're just not able to, then we might not, we might just say, we're probably not the best fit for this specific situation. But if we can, and we always try to, we try to see, we would love to help with every adoption. And so I think if it's within our power, then we always try to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's complicated, but we'll figure out the path
Yeah,
forward.
we ask all the questions. We get those calls frequently, and I just kind of start that conversation with, okay, I have questions for you that'll help determine whether or not we can make this happen for you. And so, are you in a place where you can answer some questions? And so based on the answers of those questions, and, meeting with team members, with Heidi and our legal department, we then decide, okay, can we help? And if we can, okay, let's make a plan as to how we will. And if we can't, we're honest with someone. We don't want someone to, not look into other resources or options if there are some available to
That's
them.
right.
Yeah.
And Heidi will work closely with other attorneys and
Yes.
other adoption agencies as well. We partner with other adoption agencies all the time. So yeah, we can figure out a path forward even if it's not with us. And then I just want to talk a little bit about addressing the barriers. You can see the slide. I won't read it to you, but education, coming here, being part of Gladney University is a great step. Understanding the empowering effect of choice and understanding the importance of language, which we'll talk about in just a bit, but also understanding that there are resources out there. I think that's one of the biggest things, and understanding the adoption process and understanding what adoption has to offer. I think those are all important things when addressing the barriers to adoption, both on the professional side and with the expectant mother or birth parent side. Some of the tools that I want to talk about that I think is really important is to normalize adoption. If I'm on a little bandwagon lately, it's kind of this. I really believe that adoption is just a choice, just like the other choices available in an unplanned pregnancy. And it's important that we're talking about that we're using the right language, that we're giving the biological parents, the birth parents, the expectant mom, the we're empowering her to make the best choice possible for her. This is not something that's being done to her. She's making this choice. At Gladney, the programs that we've been talking about have been voluntary adoption. We're not CPS, we're not doing removals, but however, we can work with CPS so that we can help her make a plan that's not a removal. And so that wouldn't be on her record. She can choose the family. It's a very empowering way to do that. And that we have trained and skilled staff, and so we can go out in the community and we can help train your staff and your teams to help them feel prepared to talk about adoption with clients and patients, that we can provide the right language for you, that we can provide non-directive counseling tools for people, and that we can provide amazing adoption resources for you all. So these are just some of the tools that we have to help you and partner with you in bringing the adoption choice to your clients. And how do you normalize the adoption option, you might ask? Are you asking that? So one of the things that you can do is create a welcoming and friendly environment in your center or your organization that you're working with. And I know that sounds like, duh, Jennifer. I mean everything from, I've been reading a lot about this because I mentioned that Gladney is in the process of really expanding our counseling programs to take on more clients. And I mean everything from the way the center or the room smells to the color palettes that you have to the intake process, the color of the furniture and the walls, all those kinds of things. And so it's just so important that you're creating this environment that when they walk in or that they're, being seen in, that it relaxes them and they feel good about that. I always say display adoption artwork, and there's a lot to that. So meaning that find artwork that represents adoptive families and birth mothers being together. Gladney has some beautiful photos that we have permission to share with you. We could share those photos. Having books and publications about adoption in the waiting room, adoption videos playing. We have some wonderful resources that we can share with you, and so does the National Council for Adoption on their website. Intake forms listed with information about adoption. That would be, a great way to know if someone would be interested in learning about adoption. And adoption presented on your websites. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of amazing organizations out there. You can choose your referral partners and feel good about listing those other resources on your site. And then make sure that the staff is educated and supportive about the adoption choice. It's important that if you have a staff that is maybe has a lot of barriers to adoption, to find out what happened. It's usually a personal story or they had a bad experience, but really help educate them and help them understand what adoption is and how it's different today. And then attend regular trainings. Gladney has some amazing ones. I'm sure there's other organizations that do some phenomenal work. I know Lena Pope does. Lots of organizations that are really in the education world. You can reach out to them. Practice using your new skills that you're learning. You can practice learning your new adoption language. Try different ways to talk about adoption, and I have some conversation starters that I'm going to go over in just a few minutes. Share stories about adoption. We have great stories on our website, and as I mentioned, the NCFA. There's great videos, there's great blogs about adoption, and consider having an adoption advocate in your place of work. So that can look different depending on where you work, but I'll use a pregnancy center as an example. I worked really closely with a pregnancy center in Texarkana that just had an adoption specialist. They were not an adoption professional, they didn't work in the adoption world, but she was very well versed in the adoption agencies in her area. She knew how to talk about adoption. She knew who to call to set people up with, to have a conversation. So maybe having someone that's like that go-to person in your organization can be a great idea. So don't assume a client will not consider adoption. Bring up that option. Provide a resource bag of parenting and adoption materials. Try your best to follow up and ask how she's doing. Just because someone's not considering adoption in those first meetings with you doesn't mean her circumstances or her mind will change. So it's important to check in and follow up. We call that kind of at Gladney the circle of care, making sure that we're keeping in contact, making sure that she has the resources that she needs at this time, and if anything changes, that we're adding additional resources. And it's very common for clients to shut you down when you're first talking about adoption. Don't let that deter you. That just means that they haven't considered it to this point, or they don't know a lot about it. It could be some past trauma coming up. They could be in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so it's important that you're kind of meeting them where they are, and that if they're not, I guess, open to the conversation at that time, they could be later. I think that it's important. Language is something that I really believe in. And when you're using correct adoption language, it helps the client better understand her choices. And it also helps her understand that you're not putting judgment on her, or you're not emotionally attacking her. And then of course I've have some examples of that. You know, when you talk about there's no such thing, we always say there's no such thing as an unwanted pregnancy. There might be an unplanned pregnancy or an unexpected pregnancy, but not unwanted. And then just using the real language, or the correct language for biological parents versus real, you know, all parents are real. And then talking about making an adoption plan, not really giving up a baby for adoption. When you talk about giving a baby up for adoption, that discounts all the planning that she's making for her adoption plan. And it also sounds like she's giving up something like a possession or something, and she's not giving up anything. She's making a plan for her and her baby's future, and it's important that we're putting that empowered language out there. And then the difference between keeping a child and parenting a child. Again, keeping is kind of it just sounds like a passive thing. It doesn't tell her that there's work involved, and that there's things that she's going to have to do to be a successful parent. And I have lots of exercises about this if you would like for me to ever come to your place and do like kind of a mini adoption training. I can do anything from 1 hour to 4 hours, and we can go through all the exercises and steps. And then these are just very important. These are conversation starters for a non-directive way. So have you considered adoption? When did you start thinking about adoption? What kind of life do you want for you and your child? Just asking her some of those open-ended questions can get her talking and thinking critically about her choices, which is very important. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I'm running out of time. I just thought an hour and a half would be plenty of time for me to talk to you about something that I care so much about, but it's not. Hang on just a second. It's important to deploy reflective listening skills. So when a client is talking to you about what they're feeling, you're parroting that back to them. So you're talking about, so what I'm hearing you say is, the way I understand what you're saying is this. And then understanding her feelings too, really validating them. That sounds overwhelming. That sounds scary. I can see why you're upset. Those kinds of things are incredibly validating to her. I'm going to breeze through this part. We've already talked about transitional care families. They're families that Gladney uses that are just for Gladney, and they're trained and they're licensed by the state, but they can provide short-term care for the infants and toddlers and children that we're working with. We also have, I didn't get to spend a lot of time on this, but a special needs and special care program. So we do have babies born with special needs, and we can find them forever homes. We have families that just feel called to adopt children with special needs, and so we can definitely do that. We also have a respite program. So this means that if a client just needs a break, that meaning that she's trying to parent, she doesn't know what's going on, and she just needs a timeout, we can help her with our transitional care family and then set her on a course of counseling to figure out what she needs long term. We also have a first response program, that meaning that we can, if somebody's interested in learning more about adoption, they can contact us and we can meet her wherever she wants. And if that's at your center or your organization, we're happy to for you to be in the room and to be part of that conversation if that's something that she wants. But we can go out and meet with her wherever she wants. And then these are all the resources that we have for you, and they're all actually on our website. So if you go to gladneyadoption.com, you'll see lots of resources there. And if you go to Gladney University, we actually have some great resources on that webpage as well. This slide is a picture of our counselors that work in intake, along with their email address. They're amazing, and they can they'll be the individuals that would go out on a first response or talk to anyone that calls, texts, or chats us. And that's really it. If anybody has any questions, I can look in the chat to see if I haven't answered anything. I just started running out of time, and I'm so sorry about that. But, you know, we are excited that you came today. Thank you for tuning into Gladney University. And like I said, or like Ashley mentioned at the front of the training, you will have an evaluation that will pop up after this training, and you can just fill that out, and your CEUs will be here 5 to 7 business days after this presentation. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. And if you want more information, feel free to contact Gladney, and we will set you up. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I want to thank you, Vaughn, for being with us today. I think at first when I asked her to do this, she was like, what, you want me to be on camera and do this? She likes to be one-on-one with her clients, but this was amazing, and you were a great resource for us. Thank you so much.
Thanks.